Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Suniya, we need to change your name.
I guess we do, don't I? Yeah, okay, let me see if I can do it here. Wait, I got it here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Goldstein, and I'm the Director of Day School Programs at Gateways. And I want to welcome you all to our fifth and final webinar this year in our series, Our Daughters, Our Future, an educational series exploring girls' mental health and wellness. At Gateways, our mission is to provide high-quality special education services, expertise, and support to enable students with diverse learning needs to succeed in Jewish educational settings and participate meaningfully in Jewish life. We are all aware that there is a youth mental health crisis now. Mental health has always existed in youth and has been exacerbated by the pandemic. As a result, it has also been a challenging time for caregivers, and we need to be sure that we're caring for ourselves and each other so that we can best support our young people. We're grateful to the Miriam Fund of Boston's Combined Jewish Philanthropies for sponsoring this important webinar series. Our agenda tonight is to hear first from Adam and Stacy, who will share their parent perspective, followed by our main presenter, Suniya. I'm going to turn it over in just a minute to my colleague, Dr. Rachel Shine, who will introduce the speakers and talk through the format. I want to remind you all that you'll receive resources and a survey following this webinar. We are really excited that we've been awarded a third year of funding for this speaker series. So we really encourage you to complete the survey as we want to hear your feedback and know about what kinds of topics you'll want to hear next year. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you right now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I am thrilled to be able to first introduce Adam and Stacy Bromberg. Adam and Stacy come to us from Fairfax, Virginia, and are the parents of two young adults. Would you call them young adults? Two young adults, one of whom, Jada, we were fortunate enough to learn from last year. And so Adam and Stacy are here with us to talk about what it is like to be a caregiver of somebody who might be struggling and how they have cared for themselves. After we hear from Adam and Stacy, we will then be joined, or we are joined by Dr. Suniya Luthar. Dr. Luthar is the founder and executive director of AC Groups, which is a nonprofit organization that fosters resilience and well-being using the evidence-based authentic connections groups intervention. She is also a professor emerita at Columbia University Teachers College and co-founder emerita at Authentic Connections that surveys schools. After receiving her PhD from Yale University in 1990, Dr. Luthar served on the faculty of the Department of Psychiatry and the Child Study Center at Yale. Between 1997 and 2013, she was at Columbia University's Teachers College, where she also served as senior advisor to the provost. Between 2014 and 2019, she was foundation professor of psychology at Arizona State University. Dr. Luthar's career has focused on understanding processes in resilience among diverse at-risk groups and on applying insights in prevention. She has held several leadership positions in science and has received many awards, including a dissertation award and Boyd McCandless Young Scientist Award from APA, a Research Scientist Development Award from NIH, an American Mensa Foundation Award for Excellence in Research on Intelligence, an Award for Integrity and Mentorship from the SRCD's Asian Caucus, and SRA's 2021 Hill Award for Distinguished Contributions to Research on Adolescence. So we are thrilled to have Stacy, Adam, and Suniya join us today. This will be an interactive discussion, and so we encourage people to ask questions as we go along and participate actively as we are really here to engage with all of you and be as resourceful as we can be. So Adam and Stacy, take it away.
Okay, we'll just kind of quickly tell our story a little bit and around our daughter Jada, who is now 18 and just graduated from high school and is heading off to college in the fall. Around third time she was 13,
Seventh grade.
Seventh grade, she started going through depression. She was, prior to that, she was very happy, very easygoing, and suddenly, middle school, that started to change, which was, as we all know, fairly typical, even if if a teen is not going through depression or anxiety or any other mental health issue. It's kind of a challenging time and a
Well,
time.
let me pause.
Yeah.
We didn't know it was depression.
Right.
We didn't know anything at the beginning.
Right. So we just, things started to change. She seemed not quite herself, not quite as happy as she was, but we, initially kind of chalked it up to, she's a teen, she's going through the, hormonal stuff. It's a new school, it changes and so on. So, but over a little bit of time, I think, we started becoming a little bit more concerned, probably Stacy more than I, which is kind of typical of our story, that I tended to be more optimistic or about things or put them off. But then at one point, I think, she was sharing a little bit more about other kids, some of her friends and classmates, and one who was harming herself. And I think Stacy just kind of said, out of the blue, just said something, didn't occur to her why, but she said, have you ever thought about that? Or have you ever wanted to hurt yourself? And she, at the dinner table that night, said, yes, I did. And that she did kind of once, I think at that point, a couple times.
There's a few times she has self-harmed.
Cut herself,
Yeah.
not that severely, but like little, kind of very small, but it was we didn't necessarily expect that. But so that kind of began our journey of, and we quickly jumped on, looked for a therapist immediately, and luckily found one within a few days or a week, and so began therapy. And it's, and it was a tremendously difficult journey for all of us, for her, for us. Things, got worse, certainly over time, with more self-harm, just real severe depression. And then, just trying different therapy strategies. We pretty much stayed with the same therapist for many years. We ended up luckily forming a good bond with her. I felt comfortable, but we did try some psychiatrists as well, try medicine, and none of that really ever worked. There were times that we tried new medicine. For initially, it was we'd see for a few days some improvement. Oh, okay, this is the one. And
It was short-lived.
Yeah, it was often short-lived and nothing. And then we, so I think, which kind of relates to this discussion, I think a lot of it was, there's a lot of dissension among us about the kind of strategies. I tended to be more, let's try another medicine, or let's keep, let's let it play itself out. And Stacy, more tend to say, it's not working, let's just stop and get, this is not going to help. And then sometimes, Jada ended up being the tiebreaker.
Well, we wanted, she was the one
Right, it
going
was her.
through it, so it was like, we felt like it was her, even though was a kid at the time. I think you agreed that we felt like it was ultimately her decision if she wanted to continue going down the medication route or stop and sort of pursue other options for how she could be, make her feel better. But
Yeah, so ultimately, in the end, it was, medication was not a long-term strategy for her. And I think in the end, it was for the best, actually, as she came off, things actually got better. Coincidental, but then
Coincidental.
Yeah, I think that was after years of, it was kind of back and forth. We tried medicine, we stopped, she was doing better. And then, I think a few months or a year, I think there's a time where like 8 or 9 months went by where she was really in a good place. And then just something happened and boom, we were kind of back to where, we were. And so, it was a roller coaster for all of us, for her, but us, as parents, as husband and wife, went through a lot dealing with that and the stress. Fortunately, she did, I think, probably by, 10th grade, maybe started to, slowly, I think the coping skills she was learning in therapy and a combination of different things, I think things started getting better, but again, it was still up and down. And part of it too was that I think she came across, I think really connected with mental health advocacy. She got involved the Our Minds Matter Club at her high school, and and she got really excited about that, about being part of a club that was focused on mental health. So she felt connected that there were other people like her, and she got excited that this is a way that she could help other people. And because of that, she then got, through them, she got connected to This Is My Brave, which does these shows around the country, and for people to tell their stories through songs, poems, plays, whatever, different, kind of use their talents and talk about their mental health, and as a way to really break down the stigma. So she, through one organization, got connected to This Is My Brave and was trying out for their show. They were doing their first ever teen show, but then COVID came, and that kind of fouled everything up. But then eventually they did a virtual show, and then later finally an in-person show. So it really became a passion of hers to become an advocate. And that's how she eventually ended up, doing one of these webinars with you guys. Is that she kind of, even as she was struggling herself, kind of threw herself into this advocacy and trying to end that stigma. And I think that helped her get past some of it. This isn't the only thing, but kind of, turning into something positive was a huge benefit for her and for us. And it was exciting to us to see that. And we were, she was sharing her story publicly. Eventually, on Instagram, she told her story. She ended up doing media. She was quoted in different articles and was on TV, through some of the This Is My Brave activities she was involved in. And that really was, made us so proud and so excited to see that she was making a difference for other people, that she wasn't ashamed of talking about what she's gone through in any format that she was given the opportunity. I know eventually, I think initially we talked a little bit of this with Rachel a couple weeks back, kind of in the beginning, both for her and for us, it's, there's kind of that hesitancy that, she didn't want a lot of people to know what she's going through. We would share obviously with family and some friends, but also, didn't necessarily want to share with too many people. But over time, I think it felt better for everybody to share and to bring that stigma down. And I think as part of the piece for, with the topic of tonight about kind of parent self-care, I think it's helpful for us. I found anyway, not always, but to be able to talk to some other people, friends, family, etc. They didn't know we say the right thing, and and that could be an issue. But at least sometimes it's nice to have, kind of being able to just at least vent to other people. And I've got some friends from high school. I would just text them stuff, and just even that, and they didn't say much or give any kind of advice. But I think that's things like that. I think we found helpful. We did talk at times about, and people suggested to us whether we should see a therapist ourselves. And I think that's probably, we never did, but it's probably not a bad idea. I think because as parents, as caregivers, you're going through a lot. And if you're not in a good place, it's hard for you to be a good caregiver. So it's probably a good idea. I mean, the therapist she was seeing, we did set aside time, not necessarily every visit, but we would, sometimes we would go in with Jada. She would be with herself, and sometimes all three of us would, or there were times that Stacey and I would go and just have not a whole session, but at least 15 minutes or whatever after she met with Jada, or separately, or sometimes we set up calls. And I think that we found that helpful, at least at the time, sometimes to be able to share, be able to talk through with her things that were really, eating at us because of what she was going through, and that we obviously didn't always want to say in front of Jada, because we want to try to keep as much as possible a positive face, but to be able for us to on our own talk through with the therapist, I think helped us at times. Me, it would help you for a few minutes.
In the moment, sometimes.
So I think that's another, I think, to find, I think from our perspective, I think finding people that you could talk to that can provide that kind of advice, or just be able to listen and being able to talk through with either a dedicated therapist, or at least being able to talk through with your child's therapist separately, so that you're able to kind of, some of your own worries, some of your own coping strategies for yourselves too as parents. And then I said one of our biggest coping strategies was talking to each other, which was usually helpful. Sometimes it caused a lot of tension, sometimes, or elevate things because we'd have sometimes different perspectives, but it still was important that we were able to, we spent and still do sometimes talk a lot. Spend a lot of time talking about Jada's mental health and the challenges she's going through, but in the end, we're honest with each other and we, talk things through and I think we probably, I think it's important too that, to set aside time for yourself for dates or whatever, or just getting away or doing things that, and I know it's hard. I know we talked, and we probably didn't do nearly as much as we should have because it was hard because your child's going through mental health crisis, or especially if they're harming themselves or they're potentially having suicidal ideation, et cetera. You don't want to go out and leave them with grandma or with a babysitter or whoever. That's scary. So, it's not always possible, but I think we tried a little bit, and I think we probably should have done a little bit better because again, it's at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of yourself and yourselves as a husband and wife, then it's hard you can't say give your all. Anything else?
I mean, I would disagree. Well, I agree basically with what you're saying, but
We're done.
I lost my train of thought because it was hard. Yeah, what he's saying is it was very hard to leave when you don't know what you're going to come home to, basically. And you said something else that I was going to comment on, and I forgot.
The therapy and how helpful it was to you.
When she said
Therapy, like
Therapy and how helpful it was to you. Was that it?
Whether or not the therapy was helpful, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I think sometimes in the moment, but overall, I said this the other night, Rachel, to you, that sometimes you're like, did that therapist just say that to me about my kid? You know your kid better than anyone, even if you don't know them with what they're going through. Like it's unimaginable. I always say that if somebody had told me that, that Jada was going to self-harm, I would have been like, you're crazy. The kid is like happy as a cucumber. Like it's not possible, but it's when you least expect it that I think like the kids that you think have it all or lots of friends are active in school but it's often those kids that are struggling, but that wasn't what I was going to come.
Right. And we had talked a little bit about sometimes when that is not acknowledged, right? Your expertise of your own child, when that's not acknowledged, that can be really hard and invalidating. And also like how to address that with the person who's working with you and helping you, because you're there to get support from them. So it creates a weird and challenging, dynamic. But by no means, just because someone, has a degree doesn't mean that we are the be all and know all about everything, right? It's a true partnership and really helping.
I'm curious, Rachel, you mean as in instructing or telling you what to do or not to do? This is wrong, this is right. Oh, I'm curious about how this came across.
Yeah, so what I heard Stacy say to me, a week ago or so, and then kind of what you were saying, I think when Adam was sharing about your experience with the therapist, of that stuff, sometimes it was like the therapist was either making assumptions about Jada or your experience with Jada without really listening to what you were like, acknowledging what you knew to be true about the situation.
Right. Or just or almost saying like, or kind of implying like, oh, it's all going to be okay. Like what?
Unless I say hi.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's different perspective.
I guess, yeah.
But, I mean, I do want to say, I mean, somebody might ask the question, but I do want to say that as hard as it is to sometimes talk to our teens and ask them certain questions, that you have to ask those difficult questions, because if I had not asked that one question that one night, or if maybe I would have asked it like 3 days later, I may not have received the same answer. And I definitely feel blessed that Jada at that moment felt like this is the time for me to tell my parents the truth. And like Adam said, we got help immediately, faster than probably typically. And I had a lot of phone calls into a lot of different psychologists, and only one person called me back. And now, as Sharon mentioned, we're in a health mental health crisis, I mean, you're not even hearing back from some therapists at all. So if you,
Especially if you want to use insurance,
yeah,
people-
and insurance is
if you want
like,
to use
but
insurance, it's like almost impossible.
but
to
if you're
find.
feeling in your gut, your gut is telling you something and it's usually right.
And I think that's, I think generally I think confide before talking before, I think that's one issue for us. Confiding in other people, there's definitely a benefit to it. I think there's a tendency of people too, especially those who have not gone through this themselves. I think it's frustrated you a lot, especially family and others. The tendency is for them, and their heart's in the right place, they're saying, oh, it's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be fine. She's a teen, they all go through this. And
That's what a
And-
doctor told us.
yeah, true. And that's, doctors have said that too. But I think it causes frustration too, as much as you want to confide in people. They're, especially if they're not, as I said, if they're not familiar, they're, oh, I'm sure everything's gonna be fine. And I'm sure if she was on the other foot and somebody, I hadn't gone through this, and somebody in my family or friend was confiding in me about this, I probably would be similar. I'm like, oh, I'm sure everything's gonna work out. I'm sure it's gonna be good. And that's a nice notion, but sometimes that can be frustrating because you feel like they're minimizing. Oh, they don't know.
It's dismissive.
Yeah,
It's a little dismissive.
yeah.
It's very dismissive.
Even though again the intentions are,
Yeah,
you know,
regardless of intentions.
Right.
It's an enormous pain
Yeah.
that has been dismissed.
yeah, and it's hard to, I think as much as it's good to share with people, and sometimes it's those who haven't gone through it themselves or don't have that
They don't
experience or don't
know.
have this, and I think some, and I guess it's unfortunate, but it's fortunate that so many people right now and parents are going through this, that there are plenty of people who have that shared experience, which is not a good thing, but it I guess provides that benefit of having more potential people to talk to and
Right,
comfort
but
each other.
you're not alone.
Right, exactly.
That's- I
Right.
think knowing that is.
Wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your journey. And I hope we can, as the night progresses, continue to kind of engage in conversation about your experience in conjunction with what Suniya is sharing with us. So with that said, Suniya, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. I want to start by saying, as the two of you were speaking, but a few seconds into, my heart actually felt like it was constricting, feeling your pain. Just what it feels like for a parent to know that their child life is in danger, literally. How much terror, what a state of terror that can put you into. So for a brief second, I went there just to emphasize that I'm a mother myself. Thank goodness mine are grown, well past being in the house, 31 and 28. But parenting for me being a parent is humbling. I don't care what degrees you have, how educated you are. It's a very humbling experience. I was on a call a few days ago with a bunch of very eminent researchers and clinicians who work with parents, and the opening question, icebreaker sort of, was, so just say something about parenting, your own experience or that of your own parents. And when my turn came around, I said, parenting is very challenging. That's the first thing that comes to mind. So when I study resilience and say, we talk about at-risk parents, I think just being a parent by definition means that we're at risk. Just because we care so much and so deeply, and so much is out of our control. So you're basically walking this tightrope for a period of decades, where your heart is sitting somewhere else. And what's so interesting to me is they all agreed, and the ranges of their kids was from 5 years to my kids' age. And then we came to, so what do we tell parents as the experts? And every pamphlet that came out of this organization, which is a very good organization, every pamphlet talked about, well, I could ask you, what do you think? What are parents usually told, aside from it'll be okay? Is like, here's what you should do. What are the kind of things you folks are told? Coping skills? Meditate? Do some yoga? Have a gratitude journal?
Yeah.
A lot of that.
A lot of that. So what was so fascinating is I've pulled up one of their sort of big things, which is said, parents are burning out, what to do? And for the first 5 of the 6 things were all about, do this for yourself. Make a time to meditate, make time to yoga, make time to this, that, and the other. When what you're dealing with on the other end, all of us are saying this, it is a hard job and we're all exhausted. And yet, when it comes to telling parents what to do, from the experts, we're all saying, here's how you take care of yourself, which is, I think, horribly unfair. It doesn't align with science and it's unfair. And the dialogue needs to change at our end. So that's one thing I wanted to start with. The other things I've got put down in my notes to share with you, but let me give you my slides first so that you can see basically what the data are. Is that all right? And please feel free to stop me at any point. Paul and Cindy and Kiat, nice to see you. Please, at any point, if I'm not being clear, just stop me. All right, here we go. Can you see my screen? Right.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so a quick overview of what I study, which is resilience. This is a definition. Simple definition is doing well in the face of adversity, which is, God knows, we've had more than our share of in the last couple of years. Question, obviously, that's on all of our minds is, how do we foster resilience? This report here on the right is by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, released in 2019. Here's the take-home message. Resilience among our kids or us rests fundamentally on important relationships, the kind of support, the regularity, dependability of those supports. That's the central thing, more than any coping skill and so on. And how do you, it's in this report, which you can download, by the way, for free on the internet if you just go to the National Academy site. So here's what the National Academies have said. This is not about here aspects of limit setting or aspects of bedtimes or aspects of any of these things. All you have to do centrally first, before anything else, is focus on the well-being of the grown-ups who take care of the child. Rather than telling them parent like this and don't parent like this. Does this make sense to you? You can give them all the tips you want, but if the parent himself is entirely depleted, which God knows I have been in my lifetime, I'm sure you've all been at times yourselves. All that knowledge, all those lessons are for naught. Am I making sense? So the conceptual model that's here, and that's the one that I subscribe to myself, is imagine this is us and our well-being right here in the center. If this is good, then all our behaviors tend to be better. If we are miserable and depleted, then our best efforts fall short. Are you with me so far? Any disagreements? So just like kids need this, we need exactly this, the same steadfast, dependable support to do okay, despite ongoing adversity. I have been working, I'm a scientist, working on these relational approaches for parents since probably the early 2000s when I was still at Yale Psychiatry. And then eventually when I came to Arizona, transformed the same intervention I've made back there for basically for people like us or you, relatively well-educated people. And in this case, there were physicians at the Mayo Clinic and who were also mothers. Weekly 1-hour sessions on the Mayo campus done for 3 months. The interesting thing is that the administrators had given them protected time to attend these groups. The groups themselves were, I'll tell you a little bit about them. We can talk more about what they're about, but they basically, if I had to summarize, they're about connecting authentically with a sense of safety and trust and all that you were talking about, Adam, and other people who see your point of view, feel like you're not alone, all of that stuff in spades and done in an organized way with a manual and so on. So what we found was significant improvements in the physicians' distress, depression, burnout at work, and in the stress hormone cortisol, with the gains not just sustained, but they improved even further after the formal program was over. Second study was done with nurse leaders at Mayo, Minnesota, and similar improvements. this is very rare. I don't know if you folks know anything about are in prevention science at all. It's almost unheard of that you have 0 dropouts. So somebody says something about how desperately these are all mothers in these professions, or the double jeopardy, if you will. They're caregivers as moms and they're caregivers at work. So how desperately this is needed for what happens now, and this is started at the Minnesota, the central office. Some of these nursing leaders who were in the groups themselves are able to run groups. They have the aptitude and the interest. So then they start to run support groups themselves, either for their own colleagues or for other nurses in training. And thus our goal is to spread the stuff at the institution or community level. And the same things apply at a school. We're not doing them at schools with the same principles. Just a couple of quotes for you. Groups help me connect with colleagues in a way I've not carved out for myself previously. It's a warm, inviting, safe space. I can feel my blood pressure drop even as I start to walk toward the meeting place. And it's a chance to take the time to be cared for, to be held accountable to seeking support rather than endlessly giving. And it does build a new network of support. Fortuitously, before COVID hit, I had published a paper on virtual groups. These were 5 sets of groups, and I'm happy to share any of these research articles anyone would like them. And these groups are with clinicians, psychologists, medical people, policy people in social policy, educators, and they had women with and without children. These first 5 were all women. Across all 5 sets of groups, again, we had 0 dropouts. And the satisfaction rating out of 10, how likely is it that you would recommend this to colleagues like you, was over 9.6 out of 10. That's the idea is to not try and get this to a large scale. So we're looking at short-term and effective and feasible and easily accessible. So that's the idea in this whole venture. The National Academies report has actually specifically endorsed this, saying given the low cost and ease of access from mom's own workplaces, homes, or even while traveling. People would join when they're attending a conference, or one mom would join her son's preschool in the corridor because the bell would ring just about when the group was over. So she'd sit in the stairwell and we'd join. So making it as easy as possible for parents to be there. This is a PBS video. It's about maybe 8 or 9 minutes long, and it's on our website. That shows they came to my home, me running groups virtually as well as in person. The reason I want to share this, and I'm not going to show you the video, but mention it here, is that as a scientist, my first job is to figure out, do I see this in the data? When I see it in my data and I see other people endorsing it, I'm satisfied as a scientist. Then the question comes, what about real people outside of science? Do they give a damn? Does it speak to them at all? And this was very strong evidence to me that these people went to the trouble to doing this and airing it nationally, that it was something that mothers were. And Adam, and I think it was Paul, please forgive me if I keep saying mothers, we're getting to fathers. It has taken us a little longer. And I would love to have your input as to how we might do a little better job at getting fathers involved once I'm done with this type. But I ask your indulgence, please, as I keep talking about. During COVID, as a matter of fact, I did a bunch of ad hoc groups for healthcare providers, school heads, principals, assistant principals, teachers, counselors. And these actually, most of these were mixed gender groups. So we had men and women joining in these, but the studies have all so far been done with moms. Just a quick word about educators. I keep coming back to that. Rates of burnout before in 2020 when COVID hit, serious burnout, which is exhaustion at work. Let me pause for a second. Why am I even talking about this? Because all of you rely on your kids' schools for a certain amount of sensible input. Do you not? Input and help and support, whatever form that might take. Now you're looking at those people, whether it's a school psychologist, social worker, special, whatever person that is. When we started COVID, rates of serious burnout among them were about 1 in 4. By spring 22, it had increased to almost 3 out of 4, almost 75%. were in serious, at a place of serious burnout. Much more requests for support increase, people asking them for support, and there were no increases in people giving them support. Am I making sense? So here we are in a situation where we're terribly worried about our kids. We're looking to the school for the knowledge and expertise and support in dealing with the situation. And these people are themselves saying, there's just too much being asked, and I'm pretty much at my wit's end. So our stance again is to proactively bring these programs into the schools where, just like I'm telling you, I do not tell these counselors and psychologists, take care of yourselves, but they're in these groups where they are taken care of. Make sense? So just a quick summary. We, you, I, who take care of many others, must themselves be taken care of in an organized, proactive way. I've been in my own group for 2 years now, since COVID started. I don't know that I could have got through this time without. How we benefit, you learn new coping skills and relationship building skills that you can then pass on to people in your family and community or even workplace. But more importantly, as far as I'm concerned, is to ensure that you get that ongoing support. One word that keeps coming, I have this question coming up to me frequently. Dr. Luthar, you're talking about the oxygen mask thing, right? And I said, no, it's actually not put on your own oxygen mask. I'm saying make sure there's someone who can put on your mask for you at hand, because yes, we adults too can be gasping. I'd like to just reflect on that for a second. How often do you hear self-care, even now, take care of yourself, self-care. We've got to stop saying that to ourselves and each other, because we are not super people. We are not robots. We are human beings, and we are fried and we are burned out, and we are allowed the moment, in fact, must have that moment to say, I am so exhausted. Will someone please just comfort, guide, support me right now, because I have nothing to give and I need that. We ourselves need to be able to get to that point of saying, yes, I'm comfortable doing that and I will take it willingly. When you get that point, say, I have my mask person, my go-to person around me. I can tell you it makes such an enormous difference in one's life. So there's just some summarize to foster resilience. We have to use this upstream approach, deliberately supporting people like you, the parents, educators, physicians. Benefits have ripple effects in communities, in homes and communities from the inside out. So it's not like go to a doctor's office or let me find another therapist for you and so on. It is growing from the inside out. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing now and we can talk. Any overall reactions to anything I've said here? Surprise? Anything surprising?
You know, I was just noted kind of the importance of intentional caretaking of yourself, like really that it.
You know what you just did, Rachel? Caretaking of yourself. It's so hard for us to break that.
Yeah.
And everywhere I go, that's the first thing. It's yes, we need to be intentional about taking care of ourselves. And I have to interrupt each time, say respectfully, no, we have to be intentional about what? Prioritizing that we are taken care of. There's a different sentence here.
Absolutely, you're right.
The word self-care needs to, as far as I'm concerned, be abolished right now. In the wake of COVID and all the political unrest and everything else, we need to stop with the self-care. We are human beings and say, my job is to support others, others' job is to support me, and my biggest job is, as a parent, is to make sure that I have that, what people call about our groups, that blanket of love, that network of support that you can call on at any time. And someone will show up and be there for you.
Great point.
I was telling you about, I started to say about the men's groups. We're starting our first all men's group actually now. I ran one during COVID, but we're starting a real, the whole 12 weeks, I think in the next week. And I'm very excited about that. But as I said, I would welcome any suggestions you might have, apart from anything else, about how to get more men, fathers, comfortable with reaching out for this sort of thing. I mean, this thing is available for men and women in schools and in hospitals. And there'll be 15 women signing up and maybe one man or two. And then we give the times and then they'll both say, well, this doesn't quite work for me. I have to coach my son's baseball or something happens and they're out. But I don't want to necessarily steer the conversation any particular way. I'd rather stick with what your reactions and thoughts are and go there.
More men involved, I think, probably has to come from a man who is going through this process, inviting a man he knows who's going through the process, you know. I think that's probably the best way to get more men involved, especially if the groups are predominantly made up of women. A lot of men are just going to be kind of freaked out by that.
You're right.
So,
right.
you know, yeah. So, but back to what your, you know, sort of reactions to what you were just saying. I'm a guidance counselor in a K-8 school, and this is I just finished my second year as a guidance counselor there. And as you were speaking, I felt like you've been looking over my shoulder in my school for the last 6 months. Like that, what you were speaking is exactly what I've experienced, exactly what my teachers are experiencing. We're all burnt out. We're all, you know, kind of feeling like we're brain dead. I've had many discussions with people, not only in my school, but in my church recently, with my wife, about this level of numbness we kind of get to with everything that just to be a human being in the world right now is extremely difficult. And so, yeah, I think what you're saying about the care that we all need comes through relationships. I think that's I don't know the right phrase. I think common sense really understates it, but like that's so foundational. It has to be like our starting point in discussions about caring for teens or children or parents or other you know, teachers, colleagues, whatever. It has to be through relationships. And I was kind of thinking about the concept of co-regulation when you were talking, in terms of one of the best things I can do as a guidance counselor is to be present with students who are having a hard time, to be that calm presence, and not necessarily have a particular strategy or say certain things or do certain things, just genuinely be there with them in the moment that they need somebody. So I'm right with you on all this.
Yeah, I so appreciate you saying all of that, Paul. It's to me, it's heartbreaking. Simple as that, to watch people like you all and say with what strength and conviction and love and everything you bring to your work, and at what point is it too much? And does the whole system say, stop it already with saying the teachers are doing a great job and the nurses are doing a great job? We don't need saluting. We need support. And let's be systematic about doing that. So I've developed a new strategy, and I'd be curious to see what you all think of this. Rather than coming and telling people at the school, hey, come on, we all need support, sign up. What I'm saying is, those of you who may want to run groups yourself for adolescents, for other people, for, I don't know, gender non-binary or ethnic minority, new kids in the school, anybody. If you have that impulse of wanting to help people, come join an Authentic Connections group. By being there, you'll learn about these skills, and it's all true. So this is not to sell you, some nonsense. It's true. By being there, you will learn those skills, I said, and you will be taken care of. But I have to work so hard at coming through the back door and say, come on. And once they're in, as I said, you've had no dropouts. And you'll see on our website, you'll see the testimonials. Like you were saying, Adam and Stacey, that in the beginning, I think everybody is a little more anxious about admitting to mental health problems. My approach is to say, God knows I've struggled with depression. And I don't mind saying that. I've been on antidepressants, and I don't mind saying that. There's something about normalizing all of this, which we just have to do, and stop saying, pull up your bloody socks and get on with it. Because that's what people need to do, just pull up their socks. So so that's my strategy for right now, to try and bring down some of the guardedness I think that we've become used to as an individualistic society, is saying, go and figure it out. What do you think, Paul, if I brought that to your school and said, well, this is a program for people, those who give. At every school, the kids will say, the adults will say, here, I can name those 10 people or 12 people to whom everybody goes. Correct? I'm sure you can all think of those people in your own school years, right? For me, it was my biology teacher. So we get those people, put them in a group, run it for them, take care of them, and have them learn these skills, and then they can go and offer this. That is my strategy right now. In temples, in churches, in schools. And it takes people like you who are willing to take that first step and say, yeah, I'm in. I may not be able or want to run a group myself, but at least I want to take that, as your daughter did so wonderfully. Take that step of taking that first step, saying the status quo has to change. And we have brilliant science. Forgive me, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but it has met every standard of peer review. So you've got that stamp on it. Now you folks have to pick up the baton. You follow me? I've done my job. I'm going to be 64 in December. And I have this enormous urgency, I'll be candid with you, but I have to get this handed over and have to have it get traction before I die. Not that I'm planning to, but any decent leader thinks about the succession plan, right? And this is something, as I keep saying, humanity has been traumatized. This is something humanity can use. I was telling them earlier, we're in India now. We're in Burundi, East Africa now, which we're doing pro bono. There's no human being in the world who hasn't been traumatized. You tell me one, which means we all could use it. It's a question of how do we do this and bring people there, getting the funding, getting the facility. I've got the facilitators, I've got some funding, thank God. Now you all have to come and get me the people. The need is so profound, is it not? Stacy, what are you thinking?
I'm just listening.
Riva, is that how you say name? You say your name, Riva? Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a very interesting idea. I'm also curious if you've tried these groups with teenagers or college students.
Yes, the answer is yes. I have done them with graduate students. We've begun to do them with undergrads, but not got that far yet. I'm very cautious about expansion and how many things we try and do at one go. Teenagers, Riva, that new initiative that I just told you about, which I think of as those who give, ultimately, and I just did a presentation for a school in New Jersey with a club that was similar to Our Minds Matter. There's a bunch of kids who are concerned with mental health and so on and so forth. I had, it's an all-girls school, I had 10 of them in the room, and I presented this idea to them with the idea that not just would we do it with the grown-ups, but with the same thing with them, because they're worried about the middle schoolers, which makes complete sense because 7th grade sucks. It's just a horrible, horrible time. And these children, the juniors and seniors, were genuinely concerned about what can we do to help these 7th graders. And so I presented it to them and said, and look, if I had a group for you, would you come? Would you trust each other? And we basically agreed, yeah, you select the group members judiciously. You don't want to be with someone, and that we can work that out. But yes, they said we'd be interested. And the idea would be then that they spread. And kids know each other, even the lingo they use these days. Like I've heard that YOLOs, people don't say that anymore. It's old. So one doesn't know what's cachet and what's old fashioned and so on. They do. Someone said, my daughter played field hockey and I'd made a poster for her. And this young man student said, that is sick. I said, what? This child being so rude about it. Who asks his opinion anyhow? So these kids know what works, what doesn't, what's lame, what could be attractive, could speak to their hearts. So I'm very hopeful, but that's not the only school. I'm open to any school that shows up and says, come on, we want to do this. I will play with them. I'll give it all I've got.
Yeah,
What-
and then Jada has, in her, the Our Minds Matter Club in her school and some others. I mean, I think it's been an amazing experience, and whoever joins, it's great for them. But I know she's expressed and others involved that, that it's hard to go beyond, the 10 or, you get a school of a couple thousand students, and 10, 12, 15, whatever show up. I guess it was like 40 or 50 at some, maybe at most at some points, but, and that's kind of been
They weren't
frustrating,
consistent.
right? Not consistently. Frustrating to her that, it's a lot of people, teens, like, it's a mental health club. They kind of, there's still is that stigma. Yeah, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want anybody to know that I want to go there. But
Well,
at the end of the day, whoever comes though, it's still, those
Yeah.
few people are still being impacted, and
Yeah.
hopefully talking to others and spreading the message, and they would do activities that would be school-wide.
Yeah. So that's why, Adam, this is packaged now not as come because you're hurting.
Right,
It says come because you're a helper
right.
and you're interested in helping other people. And we'll put this on your CV. Even. I mean, there are all kinds of ways one can appeal to the kids. And it's just about getting your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And I have deliberately, we don't call them support groups. We don't talk about mental health. We talk about love and connections and support and use words like that. All true. None of this is being made up. So I hear what you're saying. But I think somewhere I feel like we, as I said about my group of colleagues about parenting, we need to hear what's coming back at us. Why is this not attractive? Why are more people not signing up? And I would love your thoughts.
I don't know.
I wonder the same, even if we think about, a format like such as this, where I know there's lots of competing factors, the much smaller groups or a much smaller group of people are here involved in this discussion tonight than obviously it's the end of the year, but I wonder if also there's something about the idea of focusing on yourself that is scary for people.
Yes. It is scary for some, and the way I put it locally is for those of us who are comfortable with being comforted. We'll say, who's not been traumatized? Anybody raise your hand? So having acknowledged that, the next step is, are you okay with taking comfort from other people? So I had an interview live on MSNBC, and I hate doing television interviews, and it's live makes me absolutely terrified. But I did it. So the Mother's Day last year, and this lady, Yasmin, whatever, was asking about the kids, how has the pandemic affected the kids' depression, anxiety, and I said point blank, I'm concerned about the kids, but frankly, my greater concern is about those who are taking care of the kids. Because that's where that's what we need to be shoring up, and we're not paying enough attention to that. I mean, the clip is on my website, so you can watch it if you're curious. But Rachel, to your point of this is a small group, I try and, how shall I say this? Encourage myself by saying, okay, from one person it gets to another. It went from one Mayo study to another Mayo study. It went from the US to India. And in India, it'll go from one person. So it's I feel like Sisyphus. It's a big task, but nothing good comes free, does it? And part of why this works so well is because the standards are so high. And I think of this work as pure.
Do you think there's any, so one thing I notice on some of the, like Facebook groups about like mental health support in, the Jewish community or in this community or in that community is that there's a lot of people like stating a problem, but that when you offer the opportunity to bring people together or have a further conversation or like, have you thought about this, that, or the other thing, that sometimes then there's like radio silence. And I didn't know if like other people have found that, or how do you actually bring people together, you know, to support one another beyond the initial stating like, okay, there's something that we need support with. How do you actually get them to come together to the forum? Does that make sense?
Complete?
Like, how do you, there's a lot of people just like stating that there's a problem or that they need support, but that when you create the venue to provide that support
I
for
think,
one another,
Yeah,
like you're doing.
part of the, you mentioned this, Rachel, is the concern about looking at oneself and being vulnerable. But the other part is there's some uncertainty. So what does this involve anyhow? What am I supposed to do? What's going to happen? What am I signing up for? So part of our job is to also do a good job of saying, here's what it involves, here are the testimonials, read them, watch the PBS thing. So it gives you a good sense of what you're walking into. And so part of what makes this, again, some more safe is its structure. There's a topic for every session. So we don't walk and say, tell me about how traumatized you're feeling today, or tell me about your childhood and what was your worst memory. We got none of that. Our topics are things like obstacles to reaching out for help. Anger is not a pure emotion. Underlying it is fear or grief, or feelings of shame versus self-compassion. So every session is very focused. People talk, obviously, if there's a big event in your life, you bring it in, but it's guided. And that brings a level of safety and structure around this, while at the same time, not compromising in the slightest in the building of those, in fact, being the vehicle through which she is very strong. These people are still seeing each other 3 years after their group ended, 2, 3 years. It's that strong and that firm, the sense of, I think, Paul, you were saying it sounds simple. It's like it's your grandmother's love.
Stacey and Adam, would you have had something like this been available to you? Do you think there, or even now, like, what would your openness, willingness be to join something like that, or what's the thought around a support group or of some sort?
Yeah, I think it definitely was. I mean, we did not with, I guess it was a little bit different, but not with Jada, with our son, when he was going through some ADHD and other things. He was 9 or 10. We did like a therapy where the kids would go in one room and then the parents would be in the other, kind of talking the whole time. And we both kind of feel like the therapy for the kids was kind of worthless in the end. But the parent group was actually really good, because you had a bunch of parents. They were all going through the same thing. And I think that we actually felt better there, because it wasn't even about the person running it. She was fine, but it was more just kind of, we shared, you felt kind of, you could, like, to someone raised earlier, you realize you weren't alone, that, the other parents are having some of the same, concerns and fears, etc.
So this is a guided way, Adam, of getting to that.
Yeah.
As one woman said early on, where women get to after their second glass of wine, we get there immediately. There's no time. We go straight to that point of being real, and it really is magical to watch. I don't know how else to put it, to watch this happening. There's another point that you mentioned, that in your group with your son, I don't know if you said this or I misheard, but what tends to happen is there is some like skills training or parent skills training, or telling, try this or don't try that, which is, I think, wonderful. Now I'm going to tell you where I had this conversation maybe 2 weeks ago with maybe about 40 or 50 moms. It was a mother's thing. And I asked them this: I'm going to give you a vignette of something that might happen, let's say, with your 8-year-old. So you're having a get together, and your 8-year-old really wants to help. You'll come home exhausted from work, and this child says, I'm going to set the table and take some of your best china, and goes to put it and breaks it all. I mean, it's like a family thing. You're hugely attached and everything. You've told 5 times, be careful, be careful. And this thing's all broken and you're exhausted. What should you do? What should you say to your child? Or do?
Run. What you should say is, it's not a big deal. It's only stuff. But what you what you actually say is probably different.
That's my point. Any scenario I give you, you will all tell me, I know what I should say. No, we're not foolish. We know what the right answer is. Be patient, say thank you. Oh, it was nice of you to try. It was good of you to try. Oh, it's only things. What we say is we lose our. And that's the level of understanding that I think I keep saying parenting is humbling. Being a parent is humbling. That we can have all the directives in the world, but we need to be filled up first. I think of it like gasoline. So I don't know I do these talks multiple places. Somewhere it'll take roots and somewhere it won't. Maybe in your community, you'll use a Jewish community, which my daughter is actually married to a young man who's Jewish. I have great respect for. Maybe you'll be at the forefront of making this happen for parents who are dealing with kids or who have their own issues, just anybody. As I keep saying, someone has to take this baton from me. I can supply it, but you all have to be on the ground, the recruiters of people like yourselves.
Thinking of my school and my teachers and just the nature of school and the kind of community that that we want to create in a school that's obviously positive and good energy and all these things. They're not wrong. They're not necessarily out of place, but I think for teachers, it creates an atmosphere that feels false, that feels fake a lot of times because you're not feeling it a lot of days, and you have to come in and have energy and motivate students to learn and be positive and very really gauge your responses to students when things happen. I mean, it's very, like we've been saying, very challenging, and I think sometimes teachers need what you're describing, need a place to go with colleagues, with other teachers who are parents and everything, and just to be able to say, I'm not okay, my job is really hard, I'm not feeling it, I'm not sure how much longer I can last, and be able to like express that when the rest of the day they're supposed to be positive and encouraging and what all this kind of things, which are not bad, but it's very difficult to do that day in and day out when you're burnt out, you're exhausted, all those kinds of things. So I think that's
put on your happy face.
right. So
I can't anymore. Put on this happy face. Yeah, I wrote this up paper a while ago on this whole trauma-informed initiative that schools need to be trauma-informed and teachers should be trauma-informed, and which in short means that if a child is misbehaving or upset, don't react with empathy about, this may be reflective of pain and upset, and be empathic with the child. Okay, fine. The word empathy by definition means holding someone else's pain. How much do you expect me to hold?
Mm-hmm.
Where should this go?
Right.
I am crumbling under the weight of this. Mm-hmm. And it's not on the teachers. I mean, I heard teachers say, use words like toxic positivity and so on. And it does feel to some of them, like, stop saying to me, decorate the staff room with colorful pictures. Really? That's going to do it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I find myself just sort of in just normal days at school, not part of the things that I'm scheduled to do or technically is part of my job this week or whatever, but I'm finding that I'm almost subconsciously looking for those teachers who are having one of those days.
Yeah.
And an opportunity to say, how are you really doing? Like, are you really,
Well, be in touch. Well, you have my website, Suniya Luthar, you can look at, email me, and let's see if we can pull something together. People have, like, through the pandemic, Many schools have been using PD, professional development funds, to have their people come to these groups. And there are two models that I've used so far. One is within school, like people from different, some finance, a person in finance with a coach of lacrosse with a third grade, so different silos, but what normally would have been silos, bringing them together. And the other one is across schools, which is very helpful, being basically a group of school counselors from multiple schools, where there you feel even more comfortable about letting things out, because these are your people. They do exactly what you do. One, I did one for school heads, I did two for school heads, and a couple for school counselors, one for nurses. So it's really about saying this is available, it's affordable, use your PD funds. It's not, what more better use is there of professional development funds than to take care of our teachers?
Mhm.
And I know, so, I mean, it is common sense. Again.
Yeah, I'm curious, this is very technical, but when you do offer these groups, because I know we've tried to offer a lot of different things, and you obviously during the day is difficult because teachers are teaching, and then we found that if we tried to do it in the afternoon or evening, they just were so tired that they didn't want to participate because of that, so it was harder to get participation in those kinds of cases. So I'm curious when, what has been your sort of sweet time that has worked for people? Because I do get the sense in hearing you that, probably once people go, they come back. But it's just kind of, how do you get them to that first session even?
Yeah. It's varied. Sharon, like in the Mayo trials, of course, they were given free time. So it was on their calendar. You didn't have to see a patient to be in your group. So that's a whole different ballgame. In schools, they try to do it at lunchtime sometimes for teachers. I have been urging them, the school I'm talking to right now, the all-girls school, is said, look, if you really believe in this stuff, give them a free period. It's not such a big deal. You've got the money, get a substitute and give them a free period for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, just to do this, knowing that you're investing in your community. So when people say, oh my God, but they have class to teach and who's going to teach, think of what we're facing here. And you're telling me who's going to teach gym? So but bring it, and I'll see what their answer is. I mean, I've left it with them to consider, and then there are some, Sharon, who say, okay, I'll join at 7 o'clock with a glass of wine. That's allowed too. So I just want to make it as easy and appealing as it possibly can be. Riva.
Yeah, I guess the other context I was thinking of is a lot of both social service agencies or even local nonprofits here in Boston. There's staff that are experiencing quite a lot of burnout. And I could think that would be another area where, like you said, give them the hour, protect it, and see how you can support people that way, because that would be really important.
So this is where I keep coming back to you, and I don't mean to put more burden on you because you are the caretakers, but to the degree you can be the advocates for them, right? And say, okay, you folks, it's been done at Mayo, it's been done at Mayo again, it's been done at Valley Children's Hospital out there, it's been done in Colorado Children's Hospital. So here are all these places that are doing this. Come on, do this for your nurses, do it for your physicians. So if anybody's on a board of anything, or knows anybody who's on a board of anything, get their attention. And if they're carrying kind of this kind of a simpatico, get their attention, say, come on, let's try this in our own neck of the woods.
Okay.
I don't have any other magic.
And have you found, I think one of the things that when you're facilitating these groups or are in conversation with people or talking with parents or caregivers, or so much of what I hear over and over again, but where I see a lot of anger in places is with, what Adam, you had referred to at the beginning, that just the fact that there are there's the services are so minimal at this point.
Mhm.
It is so hard to get people services, and there's this like sheer panic
Mhm.
and all other sorts of emotions. And so how do people support one another and feel motivated to do something, feel some sort of agency that they can make any sort of difference?
That's actually oftentimes, Rachel, when I do talks for schools and so on, uh, I often say that pretty much at the outset, that the level of anger and divisiveness that has set into our communities, our schools, our families has gone so high that it's going to take deliberate effort to put us back together, even functionally, forget about put us back together well. And I think people understand, I mean, I would say I've experienced in my own family, and everybody who hasn't experienced this kind of, if you haven't experienced it yourself in your family, somebody in your family has experienced it with somebody that they care about, just because we're all so fried. So once again, saying it's recognition of the enormous burden, it's recognition that fear, prolonged trauma can put all of us in the place of being not just impatient and testy, but outright angry. And you come by your anger honestly, but we have to do something about this. And here's what we do. So there are many ways of getting to this. The fundamental point is the same simple one, which is ultimately, that's where we have to go. Riva, are you in social services yourself?
I'm involved with the school. So my kids also are older, but
Uh-huh.
like I'm involved with the school. So I know I work a lot with high school students and all the mental health issues that they've been having. And then I'm also involved in social service agencies. So yeah.
So all I mean, my other hat used to be with Authentic Connection surveys, and I stopped doing that because I want to do this full time. But those data show that at all the subgroups who are most vulnerable of children, teenagers, the high schoolers are way more vulnerable than the middle schoolers to serious depression, anxiety. Girls are way more vulnerable than boys are. And there's one group that stands out, not an ethnic minority group, it's gender non-binary, it's the LGBTQ, the queer kids, off the charts in every single school. So there's another way that coming back and saying, okay, maybe you have a GSA, maybe you want to help these kids knowing that they're 3 times, 4 times as high risk as other 10th graders. Can we do this for them? Can we get the adults involved in trying to help any subgroup, international students, new students, you name it. Students who've been bereaved, whose parents are sick, who lost, any group. So it's appealing to the altruistic people, appealing to their altruistic selves, rather than you have a mental illness or you're angry. It's you are a person who stitches the fabric of society, and is skilled at doing that, and does it willingly. So please come join us.
There are questions or, thoughts. A lot of, there were some questions about how couples can help care for their relationship.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I actually wrote this down as Adam and Stacey were speaking. In Authentic Connections groups, our program, you have to find you're helped to have to find a go-to person, someone with whom you feel relatively safe psychologically. And over the course of the 12 weeks, this relationship gets more and more cemented. And your husband and wife cannot be your go-to person. Your partner or spouse cannot be a good person. Why? There's this chap called Eli Finkel who wrote a great paper called The Suffocation of Marriage. And the point of his thesis was that we have so many expectations of our spouses and partners. You have to be a co-earner, you have to be my therapist, you're a good parent along with me. And the list goes on and on and on. You have to outsource some of this. if you want the marriage, it's good for the marriage to outsource some of this. It makes, again, common sense. If Adam can come home and saying, okay, I just went to my men's group, I feel so much better, as opposed to coming home saying, okay, I had another lousy day. Make me feel better, help me feel better. And you're both sitting there looking at each other. Wait, it's your turn. No, it's your turn, it's my turn. Outsource. And I'm glad you asked me that question.
Are there things in addition to outsourcing that like should be done together, or, you know, like, are there places like for communication to happen in?
Sure, for sure. But I don't delve into territory that's not mine. You know, I mean, that's not what I do. That there are plenty of people who help with marriages and how to strengthen them. My thing is, I want to fill you up as a human being. And then whether it's you as a partner, as a spouse, as a parent, as a daughter, as a mother, you name it, as a friend, you will bring that much more to your relationships.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we talked about it before, but I think it's just kind of finding as hard as it is, finding ways to, you know, keep that, find releases to some extent, or getaways a little, you know, just to get out, even whether both us, but we tried a lot through a lot of Jada struggles to make sure that we had a lot of family, you know, still did fun things as a family, you know, so even though she wasn't necessarily always in a good place, we still would, you know, get out for a drive or a day trip or go to the zoo, you know, whatever, you know, and I think that helped her a little bit. It probably was good for us to think it wasn't all just about, you know, going through challenges and,
For sure.
and being depressed, but finding, you know, fun things to do as a family. And also, we talked a little bit about this with Rachel last week, of, you know, also the balance of another child who's.
That's right. I was thinking about the
Yep. They don't necessarily feel neglected, so to speak. And our son is pretty easygoing, so it was not usually an issue. But that's, you know, so certainly something too, to make sure that we, you know, found ways that it wasn't so just always about, for everybody's sake, just about her depression or whoever your child's depression.
Somebody has to find the energy to make that plan, to say, let's do this, let's do the drive, here's where we'll go, here's what we'll do. Somebody has to find the energy and enthusiasm to even bring it up. And as Paul was saying, that teachers are burned out, physicians are burned out, parents are burned out. There's a thing called parent burnout now. So the question then goes back to, of course, it's a good idea to do that and plan a nice, you know, date night or family day or trip away. All of that's great, but somebody has to do it. And so it's the practicality and looking like a pragmatist and saying, all right, so then next step, who's going to do it? And that's when things get a little more. I'd like the question I asked you. We all know what we have to do. What the right answers are.
Right.
I think it also can be hard sometimes for people to accept help.
Very much so, yeah.
And I think that's a big piece of it too. You know, there might actually be a lot of people who are out there who want to help, but we also kind of are in this society where it seems like we should be able to manage and balance everything.
Yes, yeah, you're right. So when I first started doing these groups, all our testimonials were anonymous, and now they're pouring out and people are putting their names and photographs in their positions. And our website is newly designed and going to go up in the next week or two, probably next week. But there are already some up there from real people. It just helps to see a face and a person, and, you know, I have 2 kids and here's what happened, and in their own words. So it maybe helps you get a little bit, one step over that hesitation. But I always welcome any suggestions. Anyone who wants to work with us, please do be in touch, and I would love your suggestions, thoughts, collaboration, all of it.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Suniya and Adam and Stacy, for joining us this evening and engaging in this, you know, really important conversation. And hopefully kind of go forward from here.
Wonderful. All right.
Thank you.
Well, big hug to all of you. Take good care. Thank you.
As
for
well.
having
much,
me.
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Really
you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Great night.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
Take care.
night.